Hey there, this is Dennis Anyone. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I love creative people. I think art and creativity make the world go around. They get us through the hard times. And today my guest is a singer and actor, Hugh Panaro. He is a Broadway veteran. He's done over 2,500 performances as the Phantom of the Opera. He's also been in Les Mis. I first saw him in a movie called Broadway Damage, directed by my friend Victor Mignati. He's coming to LA to do a cabaret show at the Catalina Jazz Club on December 5th at 8:30 p.m. And it's a tie-in also with a CD that you can listen to on any of the streaming services you can also buy called Man Without a Mask. So I had a great time talking to Hugh, and so I'm excited for you guys to hear what we talked about. But before we get to that, I want to remind you that this podcast, Dennis Anyone, is brought to you by me. I do it because I love it, but you can support it if you like it and help me cover my expenses and things like that. There are two things you can do. You can go to DennisAnyone.net, and you can leave a tip in my virtual tip jar. There's also a thing called Buy Me a Coffee there, where you can, for the price of a cup of coffee, say, thank you, I enjoy the podcast. It always makes my day. And the other thing you could do is become a subscriber to DNR Studios. I'm part of a group of gay shows under the Derek and Romaine banner, and for a monthly fee, you get my show early, and you get all these other great shows. So check that out at dnrstudios.com. I also want to get a plug-in for the virtual game nights that I host. You Don't Know My Life, because December's coming up and it gets really busy with corporate team building events. So if you're part of a group or something that needs a fun team building event for the year-end celebration, go to youdon'tknowmylife.com, look up the virtual game nights and hit me up. I would love to host you. And it's going to get busy in December, so don't wait. And also the box game is on Amazon. So if you're looking for a fun holiday game, that's what you can do there. So, all right, enough of the plugs. Here now is my interview with Hugh Panaro. Joining me now from back east in Connecticut, it's Hugh Panaro, who's going to be performing at the Catalina Jazz Club in Los Angeles on December 5th at 8:30. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you for that beautiful pronunciation of my Italian name.
Right? I feel like I might have nailed that a little bit. Now,
I think you totally nailed it.
You have performed on Broadway, on the West End. You've done over 2,500 performances as the Phantom. Is that right?
That's what they tell me.
That's amazing. But the first time I ever saw you perform was actually in a film. My friend is Victor Mignati, and he directed a film called Broadway Damage.
Yes.
And you are the hot singing guy in Broadway Damage. And I was like, I know that guy. Yeah.
My God, that was a long time ago. And the funny thing is, and if you're friends with Victor, you probably know that wasn't even me singing.
Right. That's what he said. I reached out to him and I said, what should I ask Hugh about? And he said, well, first of all, tell him I said hello and send my regards. And he said, yeah, it's another singer. And I remember meeting that singer at the time, Gabriel Zanoni, and he had these cool
I was just going to say
songs.
Gabriel Zanoni. I remember the name very well.
And you played
wonderful.
You played a singer in it, but you weren't singing your own songs. So what was that like?
It was really funny and kind of enjoyable because Victor said I was not planning on casting anybody who could sing necessarily. And I already have a wonderful singer in place with these, great songs. Would you be offended if I asked you to lip sync? And I was like, may I hear the songs? And I listened to Gabriel and he was really wonderful. And I was like, no, if they think that's me, that's great. So it is a little weird learning to lip sync to someone else.
Right. But that's when I remember first seeing you do your thing. The show you're doing at Catalina is called Man Without a Mask. So it's your own cabaret show, your own solo show, telling different stories about your career. I listened to the CD version, which is currently available. And there's so many wonderful stories that you share from your career. But I think what I want to start with is I think when you're known for being in musicals, Broadway and the West End, long runs, and then you decide I'm going to do a solo show, I think it might be kind of daunting because you have a name. So you don't want to blow it. You want to do it good, right? How do you start that process of all right, I'm going to put together my show and it's just going to be me. I can't say, well, the script sucked, right? How is that to make that transition to doing a cabaret type show?
it's interesting because so many of my friends, really good friends, have had CDs for years, and I've always dragged my feet. And back in 2006, I was doing a show called Lestat.
Yeah,
it was a huge flop.
Elton John,
yeah. And during that time, I actually had a record contract with Sony, and I was very excited, as you would be if you were, a young actor trying to get your name out there. And
right.
And it was interesting. I learned a lot because most of the songs that they were bringing to the table, I always joke they were kind of like the songs that Josh Groban didn't want,
right?
or Andrea Bocelli, and they kept kind of saying, "Well, we need you to be kind of like an Andrea Bocelli, Josh Groban." And I remember saying, "But I'm not Josh Groban. I'm not Andrea, but they're wonderful and they already exist. Can I just be me?" And we went back and forth.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. No,
not in a million years. That is such a showbiz thing, right? Oh, yeah. Ouch. All right.
Anyhow, so
you said, "Can I just be me?" And they said,
and it really wasn't going well. We had maybe picked like 2 songs. We needed like 15, and we just, it was not going well. And then around 2006, 2007, really things started to change in the record industry, and my point person was let go from Sony, and it just kind of, the whole thing fell apart. And I always like to say we had a very amicable divorce, and I got a nice settlement, and but I didn't ever make a CD, and I just always wanted to, but I think I was afraid that I just didn't know what I had to say. And it wasn't until, and you might know this, she's a magnificent singer, Nita Whitaker. I believe she's based in Los Angeles.
I've heard the name, but I don't think I know.
Oh, she was in Ragtime and but sings jazz. She can sing anything, and she's gorgeous. And we were doing a concert version of Les Miserables in Los Angeles, and she was playing 14. And I think I was just telling her my tale of woe about, I really want to do a CD, but I don't know what I have to say. I don't want to just put my audition songs on a disc and call it art, because that seems like I'd be letting people down. And she said to me, and I'll never forget, she said, "Baby, the only thing you need to say with your CD is, I was here." And that really, really resonated with me. It took me off the hook to try to be good, try to please people.
Right, because you have a name, like people know you. Like, so it's not just like you're a new artist and this is the songs you've been working on in your, in your basement or whatever. Like,
right.
Yeah, I love that advice.
Dennis, she set me free.
Yeah.
And I started working on a solo act. A few people had asked me to start working on it.
Right.
And I had done versions of it. I had done versions in Palm Springs and all over. And I'm cutting to Palm Springs about 3 years ago, and I was doing my kind of a version of my show, and I think we just called it An Evening with Hugh Panaro or something really uncreative like that. And I got a text message backstage before a show saying, from Richard J. Alexander, who I had worked with in Les Mis. He had directed me in the Barbra Streisand tour in Europe. So I got a text saying, I'm at the show tonight with Mark Sendroff, who's, a huge show business name, lawyer. And I was a nervous wreck, Dennis, because Richard can be brutal and he never pulls a punch.
And he's directed a lot of these kinds of shows, right? Like, I met him actually.
My best friend Norm Lewis his show, yeah.
I met him recently in Palm Springs. I happened to go there. I was doing a show called The Mismatch Game in Oscar's cabaret space. It's a game show parody that I do here in LA. And we were trying to move tickets. So they said, the club owner said, come down to Michael Orland's open mic night and hawk your show, and I'll plug you from the stage. So I went there, and one of the first people I was introduced to was Richard, and everyone was like, he's a big deal. You're seeing his stuff. And then he got up and performed, and I was like, oh, that guy's good. Like, and anyway, so I was like, I remember that guy as like knowing this world, right?
Yeah.
So funny that he ended up directing.
Michael Orland, again, he's amazing. And Richard
Right.
and Michael do songs all the time. And, it's great to have someone that really understands the venue as well as the art form. And he came to see the show and came backstage afterwards. And I was thrilled that he wasn't
he didn't have a clipboard full of notes.
He didn't throw tomatoes or anything.
Right.
And just said, I really enjoy, what I remember, he said, I learned things about you tonight that I thought I knew what you could do, but you surprised me vocally even. And I think you're in the wrong show. I would like to help guide you if that is something that you're interested in. And my musical director, Joseph Falcon, and I and Richard and Mark, we went out to a greasy burger joint afterwards. Right. And we just started chatting, and that's how it kind of took form. And Richard said, one thing I know, the chemistry with you and Joseph on stage is magic. And this is a union that you've got to preserve. So Joseph, are you committed? If Hugh's committed, and Joseph said, yeah, I'm in. So we started building from there and took a lot of what my show was and stripped away all the filler.
Yeah.
And this is I'm rambling, but this is the famous story is he asked me, Richard said, Hugh, why are you singing that song about dogs? I was doing a song from Lucky Stiff called Times Like This.
Right.
And then he said, why are you singing that song about dogs? And I said, because I love dogs.
Right.
I love animals more than people. I love dogs. He goes, well, that's fine. That's not good enough. You have a career and a body of work that you should be focusing on.
Right.
And, if you trust me, I want to trim the fat, so to speak. And so we went on this musical journey of singing through Dennis. I don't know how many songs, everything I've ever sung since I'm 12 years old.
Right.
And we just started weeding things out.
Well, you give the people the hits that they want because you're known for being in Phantom and Les Mis, so you give us that. Right. I don't like when people don't give you the thing when they're I saw Ben Platt, who's amazing, at the Hollywood Bowl. Didn't give us Evan Hansen. He's like, I'm not giving you Evan Hansen. He told us up front, and I was like, ouch. Okay, all right. We're gonna go on this journey. But I like that you're singing the songs that people think of when they think of you.
I understand that. Look, I have a wonderful friend who's a very famous Elphaba.
Yeah.
And it kind of dreads I guess I got to do Defying Gravity. And what I loved about it was she did it first and she did it right up front. And it was magical. And she's like, okay, now that that's out of the way.
Right.
And it was brilliant.
Yeah.
And I
get for a performer wanting to keep it fresh and interesting or whatever, but there is that sort of give the people what they're like, oh, when's he going to do it? Kind of moment. So it's cool.
It would almost be disrespectful and rude not to, because when something's been so good to you, both Phantom and Les Mis are in my DNA. I always say I love those shows. I look at them as like the mother and father of the great British musical. And, the good news is I still love singing them. And I tell this story, you've probably heard it if you heard this. I really hated, that's a strong word. I really disliked singing Music of the Night when I first heard it and people asked me to learn it. And it wasn't until I worked with Hal Prince in a rehearsal room, one-on-one, where he broke it down. And all of a sudden it wasn't just this kind of flowery language or poetry, so to speak. It had purpose and subtext. And all of a sudden I went from, I don't really like this song to, oh my God, now I get it. And now that I think like anything, I think ignorance, when we don't understand something, then it's hard to embrace it. So now every time I get to do it, I just feel like I'm back that kid back in the rehearsal room with Hal, and it all comes flooding back to me.
Yeah. The Phantom of the Opera is the first Broadway show I ever saw on Broadway.
Real?
Yeah, I was working on a cruise ship at the time as a singer-dancer, cruise staff person, and we stopped in New York and we had a few days. And I was like, Broadway, it's going to happen. I'm going to Broadway. And I remember the New York Times, the headline when I got off the boat was literally City of Mayhem. That was the headline. And I went to Times Square and I bought tickets to see Phantom from somebody on the street who told me they were orchestra. And when we got in there, they were standing room only. So me and my fellow dancer girlfriend were standing in the back of Phantom, like shifting our weight. But it was still amazing. We were in there. You know, we got in. They let us. I know. It was a city of mayhem. I'd been warned. But I remember that. And then we were doing a section of it on the ship, a little chunk of it. Here's what I think of Phantom. When I hear that music, there's something kind of like a little naughty, a little like seedy, a little dark, kind of sexy, right? It has a vibe that I could imagine surrendering to, right? It's like your worst instincts, or like you can't control it. Like there's something seedy in a fun way about that story and that music. Does that resonate with you at all? It's sexy, right?
No, you nailed it. You nailed it, right? And, you can't shy away from it. And there are, moments in music of the night. I don't want to offend anybody listening, but Gillian Lynne, who was the original choreographer, first of all, Cats, Gillian Lynne, and Phantom, she did all of the beautiful choreography, but there were certain things that Hal and Gillian did together, certain musical staging things. And I had just started playing the Phantom.
Right.
And she came in and she said, I'd really love to work with you and take you back to a lot of the original intentions of the show. Because, as the show runs, stage managers might morph a little bit, or depending upon who's captaining the ship. But so I had this great rehearsal with Gillian and my friend Adrian McEwen, who was the Christine at the time. And it was an afternoon I will never forget. And Jilly was a very sexual creature.
Right.
And she would talk about everything. I'm not going to go into it, but I'll just say there are 6 moments in Music of the Night where the Phantom is thinking about something very sexual and it affects him down there.
Yeah. It's a seduction, almost a coercion. Like it's a little dark. It's a little like trance-like. It's a little like it's a little.
A great note I was given by David Caddick, I think, at one point. Because I love, I grew up singing, listening to Ethel Merman, so I've always been loud. And it was so nice to get in. They said you don't have to be loud all the time. You can think of it as like an obscene phone call. You're whispering this in her ear.
Yes.
And
I bet that made it so much more fun for you to do.
All the different levels you get to play. Yeah.
And I love the 6 parts. And how would she express that to you? Was the language pretty, frank?
I'm going to keep it real with you, Dennis. She goes, darling, there are 6 moments where you've got to be thinking of your cock. Do you have to edit this?
No, I'm into it. That might be the headline of the story. I always pick a quote for the thing.
And
amazing.
Then at one point, so my friend Adrian, there's a scene, the Phantom is displaying himself along the portcullis.
Yeah.
And Christine is drawn to him. And then she runs away from him. Right before she gets to him, she runs away. And Gillian said, darling, do you know why you run away? And she said, I think she said something like, that's the blocking they gave me.
Right, exactly.
And she goes, no, darling, you're drawn to his erection. And then by accident, you brush his cock and then you flee.
Yeah, it's too much. You can't handle it. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
So that became a running joke that you brush his cock and then you flee.
You cock, and then flee.
Oh my God. I feel like this, I'm taking us really down
I love that though. No, but it's, I think it keeps it alive for you because 2,500 performances, like, what would you do to kind of keep it fresh for yourself, like with the other actors? Like, how do you keep doing it when you've done it so many times?
It's interesting, Dennis, it's a question people ask, and I don't have the best answer, but I will tell you, to me, since you brought up Broadway Damage, first of all, I loved, that was the first and only film I've done so far, and I loved it. I loved the experience. I loved everything about it. I remember a few times I did a take. I remember this so well. I did a take and I thought, oh God, that was horrible. And I said that to Victor. And he says, no, you're not seeing what I'm seeing behind the camera. It's a different thing. And when I saw the edit and what he did with it, I was like, oh, wow, that looks great.
Yeah.
The thing about live theater is every night is different. You can't control it. You can't edit it. You can't go back to the cutting room and change it. So whatever happens, happens. And, you know, the great thing about Phantom is usually there are two amazing actors playing the role of Christine. They have the matinee Christine that does 2 or 3 a week, and then the other primary Christine. So I get to look into different eyes every night.
Right.
Also, there's understudies that go on. I never found it difficult to keep it fresh because you're always looking into somebody's eyes. And if you're really being truthful in that moment, you can't. I think audiences can spot bullshit a mile away. And I think if you don't keep it real, they're going to disengage. So, that's the other element itself is the audience itself is such a living, breathing organism.
Right.
So, you know, if from performing, you come out, you do something, and I feel like that's like us throwing them the ball. And then they'll respond or they won't.
Right.
And you got to go from there. What is that next moment going to feel like? What's it going to look like? And it's much easier when you're doing comedy because if they don't laugh, you know it's not going well.
Right.
But, you know, it's such an energy transfer.
I've noticed in some of my own work and the different things that I do, when it feels like I'm not getting enough back, or is it worth it, or why am I investing it? I've come to the place where I believe that trying is its own reward. Like, in other words, it would be more hard to do that amount of shows if you tried to half-ass it or manage some kind of if you weren't giving it as much as you were giving it. In other words, the way to get through is to try hard. Trying hard is its own reward, I believe.
Dennis, you are preaching to the choir. I actually had someone in my management team at one point in my life who asked me, you know, because I was saying, oh, I'm really exhausted. I'm emotionally spent, you know, after the show. And they actually said, isn't there a way you can give less?
Yeah, can you just kind of like do 75%?
And I thought, what does that mean?
Right.
Is there a way to do it where you give less? And again, I'm sorry to go back to the CD, but one of the stories that I tell on there is why I do what I do. And when I was 12, my mom and dad took me to the theater for the first time to see my first Broadway show, which was Annie.
Right.
Andrea McArdle was from my neighborhood in Philadelphia. And that changed the entire trajectory of my life. And it changed everything for me. And I go, what if some night there's another 12-year-old nerdy kid from Philadelphia sitting in the audience with no purpose or no ambition or direction in his life or her life, and they see your performance and they're inspired by it. I don't think you're going to get the same outcome if you're walking through it or maybe trying to give less. I don't believe in that.
Yeah, and I don't think it works anyway. I understand the instinct around it. Like, I understand why somebody would think that might think, but I don't think it's a winning strategy. And then you told the story on the CD, which I did hear. But then there was a follow-up trip where you saw like a bunch of shows in one day. And I was like so excited by that because it showed that your parents got on board, right, with your dream.
I think, Dennis, before that Broadway show experience, I would sit in front of the television and eat all day watching Gilligan's Island or The Brady Bunch.
Right.
I was chunky. I couldn't play sports. I wore braces on my feet for being pigeon-toed. And I was just kind of like a blob. And then all of a sudden, it's like anything. You find an anchor for your child. They found this thing that it inspired me.
Right.
And you know, it wasn't sports for me. It wasn't computers. It wasn't art. It was music and theater. And the minute they realized, that was the light bulb moment. That is something that our child loves passionately. And God bless them. They like I said, they took me to see Sandy Duncan and Peter Pan on a Friday night. And we stayed over at this horrible Holiday Inn, which I think is still there, probably with the same sheets. Right. And Saturday matinee, we saw Sweeney Todd with Len Cariou and Angela Lansbury.
Amazing.
And I mean, and then because we lived in Philadelphia and obviously it's expensive to go to New York.
Right.
They would take me to the Forest Theater for all the tours. So I saw Evita, Sweeney Todd. I saw The Wiz. You see all these and it was just literally like they say, like you've been bitten by a bug. That was it.
That was it. When did you know you could sing? When did you know you could carry a tune?
Well, what's really weird, and this is a kind of weird thing too. This is really not cool. I was our church organist.
That's cool. That's super cool.
If you're a drummer,
because you don't have to sit there and listen to the thing. You have a job, right?
I paid attention for one mass every Sunday, and then I had to just do my homework or whatever, and not miss a song. But if you're a drummer, that's pretty cool. But if you're like the church organist, not so much. But
so you would literally bring homework back there and do it while you're waiting.
I would do my homework.
You would hear the mass in one. You'd hear the sermon or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then the rest of the masses, you were like, okay, I could do a little side work.
Exactly. Well, I was up in a choir loft, so no one could. So I would do my math and all my homework, social studies, everything. And because I started when I was in the 4th grade playing the organ at our church.
Amazing.
And I did 5 masses every Sunday. I think I made
it's
$5.
Catholic church, right?
Yeah.
5 masses for $5?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
No, 5 per mass. So I would make $25.
Okay, $5 per mass.
Like what are you in 4th and 5th grade?
Right. That's a lot of money for a kid. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what age I was, but I thought I was rich. I mean, I was, saving my $25. Right. But I would, play the organ and everyone else would sing. And what's weird was I knew I could sing, even though I didn't do it. That's what was so weird because, when my parents took me to see Annie, we were driving home. This is not on the CD. This is actually another story that didn't make the cut, but we were coming home from New York that night, and it was about, late. We got home around like 1 a.m., and I remember my mom would not shut up about Andrea saying, "Oh my God, that kid, I've never heard a voice on a child like that in my life. She's the best singer I've ever heard." And I think I was in the backseat getting fed up, and I finally just said, I had a chorus line moment. I was like, "Mommy, I can do that." And my dad said, "Huey, we've never sung a note in front of us. How do you know? What do you mean you can sing?" I said, "Well, just because I haven't doesn't mean I can't."
Right.
And I got home that night at 1 a.m. My pop-up was still awake waiting for us.
Your grandfather.
And I sat at the piano and I played what I could remember of Tomorrow and Maybe. And I sang for the very first time for my mom and my dad and my grandfather at 1 a.m. And their jaws were on the floor. "You never told us you could sing." I was like, "No one really asked." So the next day, I was 12, same age as Andrea.
Yeah.
My mom and dad called my piano teacher and said, "Do you know anybody that teaches voice?" And he brought this beautiful young girl, college student, over, and I auditioned for her. I sang. And my mom said, "Can you do anything with him?" And she said, "Well, the main thing is he's 12. His voice is going to start to change. And that could be a very, hard time for
Right. We saw the Brady Bunch episode where Peter's voice changed.
Time to change.
We know what can happen. It can throw a family into turmoil.
Brady.
Yes.
Exactly. So anyhow, I started studying when I was 12, and my teacher, Melanie, got me through the voice change and was responsible. She's another culprit. She took me to my very first audition for The Sound of Music when I was 12, and I got it.
Oh, I always wanted to be one of those kids.
Oh my gosh. I was the one with the least amount of lines, but I didn't care.
Yeah, you got to do Do Re Mi. You got to do the choreography. Yeah.
I wanted to be Ralph going.
Everyone. It's the sexiest role in musical theater history for a young person. Yeah, and, I mean, you're a Nazi, but everyone's got something.
Yeah.
I have a friend named Dennis, and he has a daughter who was a singer. And when she was about, 10 or 11, I got to hear her sing, and she had this kind of maturity to her voice where it's not like, she did good or whatever, and she can go on and become a nurse or whatever. It was like the kind of voice where you're like, oh shit, what are you going to do as a parent? Like, it's a thing that needs to be fostered, that the world needs in a way. And in a way, I felt not sorry for him, but I was like, oh, shit. You got it. This is a talent that needs support or reckoning or like a plan, you know? And I imagine that sounds like kind of what your parents experienced. Like, oh, we need to foster this, right?
You want to do right by your child, especially if they love it.
And this gift and this thing.
Yeah. And the thing. And so for me, they were 100% behind me and following my dream. And the deal was, Dennis, as long as the deal was I had to come home from school, do my homework, make sure my homework was completed, and then my mom would drive me to rehearsal for The Sound of Music.
Yep.
And she would drive me either to rehearsal, and then when the show started performing, again, that was the deal. You come home from school, you do your homework, you eat dinner with the family, we get in the car, we drive to the dinner theater. It was a dinner theater.
Right.
And you perform, and then you come home right after, you go right to bed, and you start the cycle over. You get to school, and as long as my grades didn't suffer, they were on board.
That's amazing. Was there a moment where you had a professional breakthrough that they got to observe, where it was like, oh my gosh, this is working?
Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky. I did 8 shows a week from the time I was 12 in the Philadelphia dinner theater circuit. It was a very big circuit back then.
Right.
You could go from dinner theater to dinner theater doing shows. And like a lot of kids, it's hard, I think, to transition from child actor to adult. But
right.
I went through a couple of years where I couldn't get in anything. I wasn't a little kid anymore, but I was an adult. And this one director, Howard Pell, gave me an opportunity. He said, "You're really too young to be anybody in this show, but if we slap a fake mustache on you, I can put you in the chorus." And that was My Fair Lady.
Right.
And that was like such a learning ground for me. And so the dinner theater was my training ground. And I think there are many, but
it was professional. Like you were working, you were making money and doing it.
Working.
Yeah.
But then, that wasn't equity. That was non-equity. But then, then the next step, of course, you go and you get your equity card. I remember the first time they came and saw me in my first equity show. And that was a big deal for me because I'm in the union now, Mom. But the thing that comes to mind, the biggest thing that they ever got to experience was opening night of Les Miserables in Boston.
Right.
I had auditioned for the Broadway company for Les Mis, and I did not get it. And a year later, I was called in for the first national tour, and I got it. And all of a sudden, I am living in Boston, and Mom and Dad are taking the train up from Philadelphia for my opening night. And to have them sitting in the audience watching me play Marius in Les Mis was like nothing else. And I think my father cried through the whole entire show.
Of course.
Ironically, my mom being an actor, she gave me notes after.
Of course.
But they were all
Your father's a mess. I have some notes. Yeah, it's that. Amazing.
Yeah, and those moments are so precious, especially, they were both they were young enough to travel and enjoy things, as I got, they weren't always able to travel to see me in shows as they got older, and my dad, but both of them had cancer. So, it's you have to seize those life moments when you can.
Yeah. But what a journey for you as a family to have that, and to see it through like that. The show's called Man Without a Mask. I want to talk about the actual mask in Phantom. What's it made of?
Oh my gosh, great! That's a great question.
I'm curious.
No, it's beautiful.
And I also saw a video where you were like doing a YouTube thing or whatever, and you just slapped it on, and it just hung there. I was like, how is it affixed? Like, I want to know the ins and outs of the mask.
It's beautiful. The outer part is beautiful. It's molded fiberglass.
Okay.
It is lined so that it's comfortable on your face. It's lined with leather, the softest leather you can.
That's a little kinky too. A little kinky. I like it.
That's the sexy show.
Exactly. We know what Music of the Night is about now. So yeah, you need it.
The interesting thing is when you see it on stage, if you ask most people, they say, "What color is the Phantom?" Oh, it's white. If you see it up close, it's actually 5 colors of white, dove gray, black, pink. There's actually pink in the cheekbone area.
Interesting.
And it's magnificent. It's like a work of
the
art.
Phantom mask is contouring. It's using contouring
Absolutely.
makeup
Around
tips. Yes.
The eyebrow, actually, there's the molded part that actually is raised. And then around it is painted with highlights and shadow and make it come alive on stage. And not supposed to tell you this, but, there is maybe a wire inside that is strategic. It's black and you can't see it. And that's how it goes on so quickly.
And it stays. So it's not like glue or anything like that. No.
No, because you have all those crazy prosthetics on underneath it. That you do. You sit in the makeup chair for an hour and a half usually and get the actual the makeup on. You get the bald cap. That's always fun because that it goes all around your ears and it burns. The spirit gum burns your blood. And then the things. But then the mask itself is just you have to be able to put it on and off quite quickly. And
it's molded for you, or does every Phantom have their own mask? Yeah.
Well, I will tell you two parts. I'm very lucky because I was Raoul,
right?
Very, very, very early on in the show, and back then they would do life casts of his heads for everything. So back when I started learning the Phantom, it was still early enough. I went through the process where they put the straws up your nose and they cover you with alginate.
Oh wow!
And you're breathing through, and then they make an image of a concrete image of your face,
right
on which the prosthetics are then sculpted, and the mask is created. So everything is fitted perfectly. So your mask is different than mine.
Right.
We can technically probably wear them and get away with it, but the comfort level and the finesse is so carefully planned. Maria Bjornsson, God rest her soul, was a genius. And
was she the designer of the mask?
Yeah, she did not just the costumes, but she did the sets.
Wow.
As well. Oh,
wow. No. That's cool. What was your relationship to the mask? What did you think about it, or how did you feel about it?
You're going to laugh. I loved my mask. And the reason is, I'm trying to think when the Vegas show opened. I'm not sure what year that would have been, but around that time, a lot of art artists like to revisit things and go, hey, I think I could have done that better or whatever. And at one point, Maria redesigned the mask slightly. The only thing I can tell you the difference is the eyebrow. For everything, you could look at it and go, it's pretty much the same, except that the new mask that they did for Vegas had this little, it's almost like an S. It starts here and it goes like that. So it's just, and when I tried on the newer version, I felt, or I looked, in my opinion, I looked worried. I thought, why is the Phantom look so worried?
Right, it gave you an effect of worry.
Effect. And I remember I asked Maria, I said, maybe it's because my face is slender and I don't have the width of a Michael Crawford or whatever. Anyhow, she let me keep the old design of the mask, and I was the only Phantom that had the old design for many, many years. And I loved that about my mask.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this is exactly the same style Michael Crawford wore when I saw him in the show.
Yeah.
It's a weird little thing.
Yeah. And how often do they clean it? How does that work?
Oh my gosh. So shout out Andrew Patrick Nelson, if you're listening, I love you. He was the most magnificent dresser on the planet, and he's a gorgeous actor as well. And he took such meticulous care of the mask because you would get the makeup on it, and every night and at intermission, he would take the baby wipes, non-scented baby wipes, and make sure that it was pristine and clean. Or if you had a cold, he would even use an alcohol wipe to make sure that you weren't reinfecting yourself with the germs. And if there was a scratch on that mask, he had the paintbrush and he would meticulously make it look like it was brand new every night. It really is a work of art.
A lot of TLC on that mask. I love that. I was on your Instagram and I noticed there was a post with Chita Rivera, and you talked about going to see her early on in your career and that she was sort of your model for how to greet people backstage. And I would love to hear about that. I thought that was really sweet. Because it's a part of the job, right?
It's 100%, Dennis. So mentioned getting my equity card. I got my equity card doing a production of Chicago.
Right.
At the Coachlight Dinner Theater in East Windsor, Connecticut. And I was playing Mary Sunshine, which I had done non-equity, but I knew it was a hard role to sing. And I thought, this is a way to get my union card. So I was very aggressive. I called the casting director on the phone, and I just said, hey, I'm in a little off-Broadway show called What's a Nice Country Like You Doing in a State Like This? And I'd like to audition for Mary Sunshine. He said, who's your agent? I said, I don't have one. Can you come to the equity call? I said, I'm not in the union. Long story short, I talked my way into the audition, and I got my equity card.
Awesome.
During that show, the lady playing Matron Mama Morton,
right,
her name was Edie Bird. Edie Bird had toured with Gwen Verdon and Cheetah Rivera in the First National Company of Chicago.
Okay.
So, I thought I was with Royal. I was I'm in the show with royalty.
Right.
Rivera, Gwen Verdon. So Jerry's Girls had just opened on Broadway, and Edie called me up and said, hey, I got an extra ticket for Jerry's Girls. You want to be my date? And I was like, yes, please. So I will never forget this. It was not after the show. It was intermission. She said, now, Cheetah has got somewhere to be after the show, but I'm going to go say a quick hi at intermission. Do you want to join me? I was like, seriously? She goes, yeah. So I toddled along backstage with Edie, and I'm waiting patiently. And Edie said, Cheetah, I'd like to introduce our Mary Sunshine. This is my friend Hugh. Cheetah Rivera didn't know me from Adam. She brought me into her dressing room, treated me like she had known me all of her life, was so gracious. She asked me questions about me. I mean, this is Cheetah Rivera.
Right.
And I thought, this is the classiest person I've ever met. She's a big star, and she is so down to earth and kind. And I never forgot that moment. And I remember saying, I told her the story. I said, when I was in college, I cut class. I lied to my mom and dad. I took the Amtrak from Philadelphia to New York, and I saw a matinee of the Rink starring you and Liza Minnelli. And then I took the train back, and my parents never knew that I had been to New York. And she threw her head back and laughed so hard, that Cheetah Rivera laugh. I can hear it.
That's so sneaky of you, by the way. That is such a gay, sneaky thing to do. I love it. I would have done that.
A few times. I did it to Dreamgirls, too.
That's so good. That's so good. That feels like a short film ready to happen. Like, this is this theater-loving kid that, disobeys his parents to go to see Dreamgirls in New York.
And what's so funny is it felt like home. The minute... I'll never forget when I moved from Philadelphia to New York, so many people, Dennis, were like, oh, be careful. Be careful. It's so dangerous.
City of Mayhem, by the way. City of Mayhem.
Mayhem, yeah. And I remember riding. I had been riding. They didn't know this, but I'd already been riding the subways when I would sneak up to see the show.
Right.
And it always felt like home. Ironically, the only times, and there have been 3 times in my life that I have been robbed, all in Philadelphia.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I always say to the people that were giving me all that, advice, you don't know what you're talking about. New York was like a melting pot. Yeah. Everyone rode the subway.
I love that. I love that Cheetah was wonderful to you in that moment, and it stays with you. She became my template for how to receive a guest, especially a guest that wasn't in your circle that you didn't know before. It might have been, again, coming back for the very first time to see a Broadway show. And she, like I said, she didn't know me. Right.
She was just it. She's it.
Speaking of fans, Phantom had fans that would come and see it over and over again. And I always wonder when I hear those stories, I'm like, where do they get the money? But God bless them. But what was your relationship to the fans, especially when you've been doing a show for so long? I'm sure there's people that you get to know a little bit.
Oh my gosh, I know a lot of, absolutely. And unless my feeling is, unless you're really ill, it's kind of, this is just me. I'm not judging anyone who doesn't, again, I'm not Ben Platt, so I can't imagine what that must be like coming out after a show and having to get through the crowds. However, I would always try to take the time to sign autographs, do selfies, whatever, sign memorabilia, because again, like you said, they're paying a lot of money to see that show.
Right.
And it might be their first time, like me when I was little. And so you think, if I can go that extra,
you could literally make their month if you're gracious to them.
Absolutely. Now, the coda to that is I believe your first responsibility is to the show.
Yeah.
And to doing a good show. So if there were nights where I would be doing a show with a fever or strep throat and just barely getting through, and I would go out a different entrance and get into my car and go right home and go to bed and like do like a hot toddy or something.
Yeah.
I took care of myself because I knew the job that was. But if I was in any state of mind or shape to go out and say hi to everybody, I would do it all the time. And of course, I still have friends in my life that I've known since, in my early 20s, meeting them at stage doors. And I sing in Prague quite often, and there's a wonderful young woman who she was a flight attendant from Prague. On her night off from flying, came to see Phantom. I'll never forget, she gave me a beautiful picture book of Prague. Hi, Jana, if you're hearing this.
I love that.
And I have this coffee table book, and now, all these years later, I go over to sing in Prague, and I've met her husband and her baby, who's not a baby. It's amazing what the relationships you develop. And, I think it also depends on the show. I think Sweeney Todd, I had that too, with a lot of repeat people. I have a lot of friends that have done Wicked, and I think a lot of the Elphabas and Galindas. Yeah. It's certain roles I think attract people more than others. I always felt that Phantom and Elphaba really attracted the people that felt othered.
Right, because there's a bullying theme to both of those characters, right?
Yeah.
Is that something you connected to in the Phantom character?
Oh, my God.
Were you bullied?
I was bullied relentlessly. Like I said, I was a church organist. I was pigeon-toed. I wore Husky Plus from Sears. If I was called Hugh, it was rare. It was usually Fairy, Faggot, Fatso, Big, Fat Albert, you name it. I was tortured. And usually, mostly weight involved, but also for being artistic and not being a jock. So when I've gotten, again, I've talked about this with a lot of my friends who played Elphaba. We get the mail, I think, like other people may not get, just saying, I saw your show. I really identified with your portrayal.
Right.
And it actually helped me with shit that was going on at school.
So in Broadway Damage, you're like the hottie hunk guy. So when did you become a hottie, and was that a mindfuck? Having your background, not being validated for that stuff when you were younger.
That was the funniest thing, because my friend Aaron played the role of Robert, who I think it's Robert. Golly, it's been so long. But there's a character in there. So there's the lead, who's like the golden boy, played by Michael Shawn Lewis, and then the sidekick role was kind of like the best friend who was secretly in love with the glasses,
dreamy guy.
And there were two roles that I thought I got called in for David. I'm like, no, they have me in for the wrong role. And for whatever vision he had, Victor saw something else, and it was so much fun to embrace that. And you know what? It actually was, I think it was probably the first time in my adult life where I actually felt sexy and not nerdy.
Right.
Because you're like any other actor, you're putting on a costume. The leather vest, they gave me a great haircut.
Yeah, no, you were kind of like a rock stud. Like you were like hot as fuck.
They sent me to a tanning booth.
Yes. But that was not you at all, not your background at all.
No, I worked out with a trainer. I had a six-pack. Yeah. It was hysterical. And then, you take the costume off at the end of the day, and I'm just like, I'm back to being me. Whereas Aaron, who's playing, the nerd boy, he was like smoking, he was the badass. I thought, this is hysterical. If anybody sees this, we are so the opposites of the way Victor cast us. It was kind of funny.
Right. I met this guy online as a friend. We became friendly, but he was a sexy guy. Like, there were a lot of pictures of him being hot, and we would hang out. I'm like, he's always so nice, but he's like this hot stud with this body and this like beard and like, you know, all these Instagram pictures, whatever. And then I found out he was a heavier kid, and I'm like, oh, now it makes sense. That's why he's nice. Now it makes sense. Like, it never leaves you, right? Like,
oh my God, it never. I'll speak for myself. It is always there. It is always there. And I remember the name of every kid that calls me fairy so faggot Pugsley. I know their names. I know who you are.
You know what? And they're not thanked on the album, by the way. But it's a nice. Was it when you started to get attention for the way that you looked? Was it a bit of a mind fuck? Like, oh wait, okay, yeah, I can have fun with this.
You know what? It wasn't because I still was me at the core.
Right.
But it opened me up to some other roles. So all of a sudden, after that, I was being considered more for like soap operas and stuff like that. So not just, but again, for television and film, I mean, so much of it is your innate essence.
Right.
But they said Victor saw something different and never made me feel like it was something I couldn't do. He directed me in a way that felt comfortable and would ask me questions. Are you comfortable with this? Da, 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 da. And so during the filming, it was very easy. I think holding on to that, I didn't hold on long because right after we stopped filming, I changed my diet. I stopped working out. I went back to being like, I'm going to eat everything in sight.
Right.
I mean, I didn't I'm just saying, but when you're working out with a personal trainer and going to a tanning thing and they're doing your hair and makeup every day, you feel sexy.
Yeah.
But that's a little hard to maintain.
I get you. There's a couple things on your Instagram where you did a morphing thing where it morphs from different looks. Like it's some app that you can get where you just see different headshots and all the changes. You have some amazing hair moments. What was your best hair role? Where was the role where your like hair was like killing it?
Oh my God. Well, it's got to be probably the Les Mis section, although that started actually before when I was playing Jesus.
Oh, Jesus has the best hair in the world. He always has that.
Yeah, that was when, and I was way too young to play Jesus. I was only 21, but that's the first time I had the long hair. So when I went into audition for Les Mis, that was one of the boxes that was kind of ticked off.
Right.
But that I have to give a shout out. Nellie Beavers does all those amazing morphing social media. She's just magic. She's such a great filmmaker and just so smart and clever. And I gave her all these headshots that I had. I've had headshots since I'm, 12.
Of course.
And she just, I don't know how she did it. I still don't know how she did it. She did it herself. And, but you can morph things. And I was like, it was so clever. And she went from black and white into color. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah. But the different looks and the different hair. And I was like, oh, I would have worked that hair so hard. I would have shaken it.
It's a lot of hair.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
It was very good.
The Marius hair was...
Yeah.
And this, I have to say, it actually pissed me off a lot because some of the haters would write me letters. I'm not making this up, Dennis. I got letters saying, FYI, they didn't have blow dryers in that century. And I was like,
somebody doesn't feel good about their hair. Somebody doesn't feel good about...
I didn't blow dry this hair. I got out of the shower, I combed it back, and this is what happened.
Yeah.
So,
bite it. This looks this good without even a blow dryer. So I
was so mad at that.
It's super hot, and it's not historically inaccurate.
They think I'm like, backstage with my curling iron or something. I don't know.
That's somebody that didn't like their own hair growing out of their head.
Maybe. I don't know.
When I interview great singers, I like to talk to them about their relationship with their voice. Like, does it feel like a gift? Does it feel like a friend? Does it feel like, because when I listen to your music, it feels so effortless. You never go, oh, he's going to go for that high note. I don't know if he's going to get it. Like, it just feels pure and effortless and wonderful. You don't hear the work or he's going to try. He's going to go for that D flat or whatever it is. Like, it's just there. So how do you think about your voice? Because it's obviously something you have to maintain and take care of and not take for granted, right?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for saying all that. That's awfully kind. And I believe that singing should be as natural as possible. At least I'm speaking just for me. I always go back to the imagery of like, if you say, hey, it's my birthday, you want to sing Uncle Hugh happy birthday? They don't think, oh, I've got to place the sound here. I don't have to, I have to expand my diaphragm.
Right.
Oh, I've got to squeeze a quarter between my butt cheeks for support.
Right.
They just think about the moment and they sing hopefully with joy, just sing words on pitch. And that's oversimplifying. I know, but I always thought singing should be just an extension of our speaking, very much like the scene in The Music Man, where they're like, say ice cream.
Right.
Nothing. Ice cream.
Oh, yeah.
Ice cream. And I was like, oh, that's such a great analogy, because I will tell you, I've been singing since I was 12, at least singing in public, and it always felt natural, and the J word, joyful. It brought me great joy because it wasn't something I had to think about. It just came out very naturally. Cut to, I went to college for classical voice.
Right.
And the teacher that I requested was not available because he was in his 70s and they weren't giving him new students. So I got this new hotsy-totsy teacher he was like the it boy. And after one semester working on my voice in his studio, Dennis, I couldn't sing anymore.
Wow.
I was so crippled.
In your head about it.
In my head, crippled by all this technique, everything. He had this strange machine where you would put it up to your mouth and form. If you were going to say "oh," you would go "oh" and put it up, and he'd dial it. It was like something for your embouchure. It was so bizarre. I was almost vocally paralyzed with fear and anxiety, and I'll never forget it. My tough as nails Scotch Irish mom. I came home I'm a freshman. And I came home and I was sitting at the piano trying to go over some Italian art song. And she came in, she goes, "What are they doing to you down at that school? You can't sing anymore." And I burst into tears. Oh. I said, "Yes, I know. I don't know, Mommy. I don't know." And I'm not making this up, Dennis. She put the fucking, oh my God.
Got on that horn or whatever she did.
Bleep me out. She put the freaking Annie score on the piano, and she said, "This is the first song you ever sang. You didn't think about all that nonsense. Now sing for your mother and put all that bullshit aside and just sing me a song." And that was the turning point. I sat there and I sang "The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow" again, however old you are, as in freshman year in college. And I went to college the next day to the dean, and I said, "I need to switch teachers. And if you don't give me Mr. Groders," that's the one that I wanted,
right?
Said, I'm going to take my tuition elsewhere. Thank God.
Right, because it almost derailed the whole thing. Wow.
And he was like the most loving grandfather figure, aside from being a wonderful teacher. He had studied with famous Hans Hatter, and he saved my life, and he saved my vocal life. And he didn't ask me to do anything that wasn't natural,
right,
to me. And I think it's like anything else. One of my pet peeves, Dennis, is like these modified vowels when I hear singers not singing like what was the word supposed to be with? Yeah, is it supposed to be? And I'm not saying any names, but
I'll say it in sync. It's gonna be May. It's me.
Oh, okay.
But that became a thing, so now we love it for its distortion.
There might be somebody on Broadway right now at the end of "With one look, I'll be mad."
Yeah, well,
instead of "I'll be me." Anyhow, it drives me crazy. And
there it is.
It's just, I don't know.
Yeah,
I always. The only other thing I'm going to address is that you said the word ease, and that was one of Mr. Groder's 5 goals of singing.
Yeah,
I don't want it to sound like you're going to bust a vocal cord, so there should be an ease about it, so that it puts the audience at ease.
Right, and there are singers where you can feel that they're working hard, and I still enjoy them, but that's a quality that yours just seems like, he's going to hit that note. You toured Europe with Barbra Streisand. And I once saw a clip of her where somebody said, "How do you hold the notes so long?" And she goes, "I just want to." You know, it was very like, she wasn't in her head about it. She just was like, "Oh, I want to do that, so I just do it." I want to know what it was like to work with Barbra and do that to her. But also, I listened to her autobiography. She loves food. Every story was like, and we had the most wonderful chocolate chip cookies. Like, it was like she loves food. So is that, I just read into her autobiography that, or is that true from your experience?
No, I'm with her with that. We would go out and eat and stuff. Oh my God, the restaurants we would go, and then, and she would always share with us. I mean, I have nothing but like love for that woman. I grew up listening to her from the time I could walk. And I just did an interview where I said, I really do believe that I learned to sing by singing along with Barbra. I think I learned phrasing, and I know I learned breath control because, you know, you want to you sing that last note of Evergreen that she just holds.
How'd you hold it so long? I want to.
A piece of sky. And back in those days, they didn't have like the loopy things, like all the bells and whistles that was her. That's what she can do. And, so singing with your idol, which could have gone either one of two ways, because I have met people that I just adore, and you find out, oh wow, they're not as lovely as you want them to be. And she was the opposite. She was kind and so first of all, so professional. And it was like a master class watching her. But I loved, I grew up watching Marcus Welby, MD.
Right.
And starring James Brolin.
He was so hot on that show. He was so hot on that show.
And so to watch Barbra and Jim like holding hands, just walking into rehearsal.
Yeah.
My heart was exploding.
Amazing.
And to look into those piercing blue eyes and you're like, oh my shit, I'm singing with Barbra Streisand.
So would you come out and do duets with her? Like, You Don't Bring Me Flowers? Like, was that your role in the tour?
There were four Broadway guys, and we would do, we did this is it. I finally found someone.
Yeah.
From
Mirror Has Two Faces. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyhow, we served two things. We did a few duets with her. We did Somewhere, the finale. But then also we were strategic because we came out and did a few of our own songs while she had time to change.
Right.
So the audience would get not one, but two magnificent gowns. And she would get to go off stage and have a glass of water or whatever. And it was a win-win for all of us. And it was, plus I'd never been to Europe like that.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm a dog person, and Sammy was with her the whole time. So we would play with Sammy at sound check.
Right.
And then, talk about food.
Right.
One of the things I remember was closing night. Donna Karen threw this gorgeous party, and Barbra had this gelato, chocolate gelato. And she's like, you want some? I'm like, are you kidding? Twist my arm. She couldn't finish. So I finished the gelato. And, it was magical. And, I still kind of can't believe that happened.
Yeah, what a great experience to have had that.
It was great on all fronts, yes.
Also on your live CD, you mentioned watching Lawrence Welk with somebody in your family, your grandfather, your pop-pop.
Yeah.
My mom used to watch Lawrence Welk, and I used to think it was so square. I thought it was so uncool and so hokey, and like she loved it. And now as an adult, I watch Dancing with the Stars in the same way my mother watched Lawrence Welk. It's like comforting. It's pretty people and nice music and costumes and feathers. Like, it's not, heavy. It just makes you feel good. So I understand it now.
They were really talented. You have to think about it. Back and then they looked like grown-ups to me, but they were kids. They would work at the Lawrence Welk Dinner Theater, and they would be brought onto the show. And, all those people, the Lennon sisters, Joe Feeney and
Bobby and Sissy.
Thank you, Bobby and Sissy.
Yes.
It was all, but that for me, because of the age difference, and my grandfather lived with us because, actually for the longest time before I was born, both my mother's parents lived in the house with us. We were a three generation home.
Right.
And my grandmom died when I was 3, so I don't remember her very well, but Pop was like a third parent from the time I was born. And he was a pretty tough guy. He had been a Marine and all full of tattoos. And here's this little singing boy playing the organ. And I would look for ways to connect with him. And I would go in when he would be watching like soap operas. Right. And I'd try to talk to him and he would shush me. And I could only talk to him on the commercial breaks, like during the edge of night.
Right.
But when we would watch Lawrence Welk, I could actually have it, like the song would end and I said, that was really good. He said, yeah, that was good, Huey, wasn't it? And we would talk about things. So that was our bonding.
Right.
Bonding.
Beautiful. I love that story.
Yeah.
I have a couple more things I want to bring up with you and then we'll wrap it up. I've been watching the Wicked rollout and all the Broadway people show up for the Broadway people. I feel like the Broadway community is very close-knit. Everyone knows everybody. It feels like it's a hard world to be a jerk in because word would get out and you're doing the show for years and it just doesn't – whereas in film and TV, you could be a jerk on a movie and then move on to the next thing. And, like it feels like it would take work to be a jerk in that world and it wouldn't serve you. Am I right or can people do it?
I've been I can say the 99.9% of the people that I've worked with are divine. And I remember I did a show called Sideshow.
Yeah.
And when I tell you every single cast member, you could go out one-on-one with every single cast member in that cast and have the most beautiful time you can imagine. There was not one bad apple in the bunch.
Right.
Now, it's not always going to be the case. There have been some times where, and again, these might be some people who are big stars and
right.
they want their things a certain way. But I don't want to out people, but a lot of my friends to this day are still backstage people right. who are dressers, wig people, crew, stage right. managers, sound people. And we keep it very real. And so when we know all the people out there who are like nightmares to work with or somewhere in between. And, one of my dressers just said, look, it's a very real thing. So-and-so slapped me because I gave her the wrong pantyhose. She wanted the right one and I gave her the left and I got slapped.
Damn.
Now this is like a real person. I'm like, right. Are you saying, I'm like, did you hit her back? He's like, no, I couldn't. But I think that's not the norm.
It feels like the exception, not the rule. It feels like it's
the exception.
Yeah.
Phantom of the Opera was my family from Hal Prince down to the doorman, down to the people that took out the trash. You knew everybody. Everyone was lovely.
Well, and when Gavin Creel passed away and you would see the posts and how loved he was, and you did feel like this was a community and a family because it's intense what you do. And it's not that giant of a world. Like it feels like everyone knows kind of everybody. So
yeah. There is a divide though, because there's like, here's Angel.
Yeah.
A walking angel on the planet. And then above that, that's Gavin Creel.
Oh yeah. That's that guy. All right. He's that guy.
There are a lot of nice people out there, but Gavin, that's a whole other human being.
You have a picture with Dr. Ruth. What's the story? I admire her. I think she's amazing. God rest her soul.
She came to see Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
And I was out by myself. I was just by myself having dinner between a matinee and an evening show. And who's across at the other table but Dr. Ruth and a few of her friends. And I had my hair the same as I had it in the show. And she looked over and she waved and went like this. I was like, hi, Dr. Ruth. She goes, I just saw the show. And she did a whole video saying that. I have the video. It might be on my Instagram actually, where she says, please tell all of your cast members that they must all have wonderful sex lives because the kind of performances they delivered was very real and very on point. And she made it again all about sex. She's like, you must all be having wonderful sex because the performance was very alive and electrocuting.
I love that. She probably would have loved your Music of the Night journey.
I wish
She could have probably broken it down and done a thing on it.
I always loved watching her.
Yeah.
And I'm very respectful. If I see someone at a restaurant, I would never just go up to them. But she called me over, and I because that's a great thing about, like you said, New York. Everyone just lets you be. You know, you can be a famous person riding the subway. No one's going to torture you.
Yeah.
But
Dr. Ruth was cool.
She was very cool.
You've been in mega hits, and you've been in shows that closed quick. What did you learn from the ones that the Lestats or the Red Shoes? Like, what's that like? How do you process that? Or do you get better at it over time?
The biggest learning curve was the Red Shoes. Now, we opened on a Thursday, got our notice on a Friday, and closed on a Sunday. Wow. So five performances. Now, there were a lot of previews.
Sure.
And, as Bambi says on Bambi, if you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all.
Right.
So the director of the Red Shoes was a gentleman named Stanley Donen.
Right. He's a filmmaker, like Singing in the Rain. Yeah.
Correct. And that's all I'm going to say is that he was the director of that show. And I remember thinking, it was my first time creating a role. I was not the first Marius. I was not the first Raoul. This was my first time originating a role. And I knew psychologically that would mean, oh my gosh, we're going to have an opening night party.
Yeah.
We're going to do an album.
Right. The Tonys, all the stuff.
All that stuff that goes with your first time.
Right.
And during rehearsals, many of us were so abused spiritually, emotionally, intellectually. And growing up a good little Catholic boy, I bit my tongue all the time and let myself be abused and didn't speak up for myself, didn't defend
those are
myself.
Hard lessons in this life. I've had those.
All because I wanted the cast album, I wanted the opening night party. Well, the irony is we had a really bad opening night party. We never did an album. And what I learned from that was to never lose your self-esteem for the sake of the dangled carrot.
Right.
It was a very hard lesson to learn. But it taught me do your best for the work.
Right.
But also do not let yourself be a doormat. It should be joyful. And that, unfortunately, it was a very, very miserable experience.
Yeah. But I think sometimes we learn things from the hard stuff more than we do when things go well. Any Elton John stories from Lestat?
There's going to be, when I'm at Catalina, I'm doing one of the songs that
I love it.
Elton wrote for me.
Yeah.
In Lestat. So we started out, at the Curran Theater in San Francisco.
Right.
And then we went to Broadway and it was revamped.
So you played Lestat. You were the Tom Cruise role from the movie. Okay.
Yeah. And they brought in a show doctor to try to fix everything that was wrong.
Right.
And there was so much wrong. But one of the things that was wrong was the opening number was just not landing.
Right.
So they asked Elton if he would write a new song for me to open the show. And he wrote this really beautiful song, but not for the opening.
Right.
He wrote a beautiful song for kind of like midway through Act One, where they didn't really need a song.
Right.
But it was a beautiful song, and I actually do it and tell the story about that in the show, because it was originally going to be, I was hoping it was going to be the title of my album. The song is called Right Before My Eyes. And, when you do these CDs, you have to get mechanical rights and clearances for everything. And Lestat, because it was such a flop, was never even published. And so we jumped through so many hoops.
Yeah, because it's not on the album. I was like, I listened to the album. It's not there.
It's not on the album, and I'm a little heartbroken that it's not. But I wasn't going to be sued.
Right.
So we left it off the album and we changed the title. So, because originally it was going to be Hugh Panaro, Right Before My Eyes.
Right.
But then fate took its its turn. And also the funny thing, which is not on the CD, but we talked about the files when they recorded our album live at 54 Below. The files were corrupted. The hard drive got corrupted.
Oof! Ouch!
And they lost all the tracks
to that song or to the whole thing.
To the whole thing.
Wow!
And it took them close to 18 months, I believe. It was 18 months for some like computer wizard to go in and crack the code and retrieve these damaged song tracks off of the hard drive. So the album itself is a miracle that it
sounds
exists.
amazing. It doesn't sound like something that was like salvaged. Wow.
It really, I hate to use that. It is a miracle because for 18 months we thought it's gone, like completely
heartbreaking.
Gone.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking. Yeah. But so after that, once we got the tracks back, I was like, well, if I have to change the album name and cut a song, that's nothing after.
Yeah, after feeling like we almost lost everything. All right. Well, if I come to the show, when I'm going to, you're going to sing that song.
Oh, I will sing it. I can't wait to meet you in person.
Oh, yeah, it'll be awesome.
I will find you in the audience for that song specifically because I always need it's about someone in Lestat's life. So I can
be the victim, like maybe a vampire thing, or maybe I might be thinking. Person, all right, I might be thinking things like. All right, I'll bring some subtext.
I made someone very uncomfortable in London, apparently, doing it.
Oh, good! I can't wait. I love uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So your show is December 5th at 8:30 at Catalina Jazz Club in LA, and you are on Instagram as well, Real Hugh Panaro, right?
Real Hugh Panaro, because I think there's some other ones that aren't me, and I love that they have other ones. But so when I did mine, and I'm not the best with social media, but I'm learning.
It's a thing. Like I'm not either. So for the art for this podcast, you mentioned before we started recording that there's a picture that you love that we might use.
Oh my gosh.
Describe it. Tell me about it.
Okay, so on the day we did a big photo shoot with Joan Marcus. Joan Marcus, you probably know, does all the Broadway photo shoots. She's magnificent. She had been photographing me since I was in Les Mis when I was 23. Anyhow, on the eve of the 25th anniversary at Phantom, we did this huge photo shoot. And it was a long day, and I would always bring my dog, Soot, to the dressing room. And he would just chill out. He'd hang out in my room on the sofa. And he knew the show so well that he knew when the chandelier music would play, he would wake up and come to the top of the stairs and wait for me. And it was like clockwork. And Hal Prince would come up and sit with him at intermission. And it was so cute. But anyhow, so I'm doing the final scene, and I'm sitting in this big phantom throne. And Hal says, "Hugh, is the boy here?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, go get him." So I went upstairs. In between that time, he'd already talked to Joan Marcus, and I sat in the phantom chair in the throne, and they put Soot on my lap, and Joan Marcus took a whole series of photos of me with my furry child, Soot, in the phantom throne. And then our fabulous press man, Michael Borowski, had them made into 5x7s, and anytime a child would ask for a picture of me in the show, that's what they would get. So that became my official fan shot.
I love that. And that will be part of the art that accompanies this podcast, which is so awesome.
Oh, cool.
So here's my final thought. Well, while I was listening to your music, I thought, I think music is a healing thing. I think you can literally feel it come through the speaker and hit your skin and help you. And especially now when a lot of people are in a very uncertain time.
Yep.
Do you find it healing when you make it? Talk to me about music and healing, and do those words go together for you?
They are 100% synonymous because singing music, it's all vibration.
Right.
And that's all an energy. All we are as human beings. We have these lovely spacesuits we walk around in, but the thing that no one can put, what animates us, and it's the energy, it's the vibration. And when we are in a room together, all vibrating on like that same frequency with music, it's magic, and it is very healing. It's healing doing it. I will tell you, Dennis, though, but like you said, at hard times like this, it's hard to get it up to sing sometimes, but then you realize that goes back to the thing you said. It is partly the gift that And, you know, I love RuPaul's Drag Race. I know every season of it. And one of the phrases, which I think comes from Spider-Man actually, is with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
And, I think in shitty times, it's every artist's responsibility to go out there and vibrate on as high a frequency as we can and be part of the healing because we need it.
We need it.
But I'm 100% with you. I believe music. I can tell you, music saved my life from the bullies. So music is healing.
I love that. What a great note to end on. Hugh, I love this conversation. I really can't wait to come and see your show. So thanks for doing the podcast. I know it's going to be fun.
All right, man.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
All right, you too.
Bye. Thanks again to Hugh Panaro. If you're in LA, go see his show on December 5th at Catalina Jazz Club. I will be there. But if you're not in LA, you can listen to it on any of the streaming services. It's called Man Without a Mask, or you can pick up an actual physical CD. I love physical media. All right, so this happened. I'm going to just share some fun things I did this past weekend, and you might get a kick out of some of them because they were unusual. At least one of them was. My friend Jeffrey recommended that we go do something called forest bathing. So we went to the LA Arboretum, I think it's called. It's in Arcadia, and it was after dark. And Jeffrey and his husband Talis and I went, and there's a guide there that kind of takes you into the foresty part or the tree part, and it's dark. And forest bathing, from what I understand, was something that maybe started in Japan, but it's this sort of practice that's sort of meditative. It's supposed to connect you to nature, and also the idea that all of these trees are connected to each other, and there's moon stuff happening. It was very woo-woo, but as you know, I'm all about that. But it was kind of cool, and you know, you'd be out in the dark and you'd be thinking about trees and given certain prompts and things to do. But one of my big takeaways is there was probably like 25 people in this group. And after each little section, you were invited to share what you observed. And people would offer up things and say, you know, I felt cold, or I thought this, or I was just grateful to live in a place and be around a group of people that were open to something like this. Like, everyone was open, everyone was kind, nobody was like on their phone or anything. It was just like, I don't know, the other people being cool and open and not too cool for something like this was particularly moving to me. So that was it. I'm forest bathing. I've done it. Yeah, and it wasn't even on my dream board. I did it anyway. And then I've been seeing a ton of movies. I saw Y Tu Mama Tambien at Vidiots. It's one of my favorite movies, but this time I was really struck by the older female character, her journey and her pain. I think when I first saw it, I was all about the boys, but it's great. It's so great. And then I saw Queer with a screening at the DGA with Daniel Craig there and all the other actors there, and the director, Luca Guadagnino, and it's based on William S. Burroughs' book, and Daniel Craig plays a kind of character like William S. Burroughs who is in Mexico City. He's an addict, and he has this romance with this young guy played by Drew Starkey. But I was into it. It's his movies, Luca Guadagnino's movies, are very sensual. Like, you just kind of feel them. It was very beautiful, but one of my favorite parts about it is a regular guest on this podcast, Drew Droege, has a part in the movie. He plays this kind of bitchy gay guy that's in the bar where they all hang out, and he has interactions with Daniel Craig, and it was just delightful to see him up there on the big screen. He also does Mismatch Game, and you know, when the title cards are coming up, there's these big fonts, and there's Drew's name right there in the mix with all the others, and I was so happy for him, and he does a great job in the movie. And he told us afterwards, I was with my friend Glenn, and we were talking to him, and I think in a roundabout way, this opportunity came to Drew because of the Chloe Sevigny online videos that he's famous for, like where he imitates Chloe Sevigny. Apparently, Luca Guadagnino was a fan of those, and maybe a friend of Drew's who knew Luca had Drew do a special one for him or something. I'm probably getting the facts wrong. Long story short, those fun things you do that keep you feeling creative and you put out in the world and you don't know if anyone's going to take to them. It led to Drew Droege getting cast in this cool movie. So I love that story. The other thing is I went to Gladiator 2 screening at the Chinese Theater in IMAX, and a lot of the actors were there, Paul Mescal and Denzel Washington, and it was super cool. I was into it. I really enjoyed it. So I went back and watched Gladiator 1. I had a few friends over last night, and so I'm all gladiatored out. But the thing that struck me as I was watching it, and I have been to the Colosseum, I've done tours in Rome, I know what gladiators are, but I was struck by, oh, wait, these people, like, kill each other for people's entertainment? The barbarism of it just snuck up on me. I was like, oh, yeah. So every time you see a hot guy as a gladiator for Halloween, it's like, oh, that guy would kill another person for other people's fun. Anyway, the reality of Gladiator broke through for me, and I was like, wait, what? That doesn't seem right. I think that's enough. I talked about the movies. I talked about forest bathing. It's a long interview. I think I'll wrap it up. Before I let you go, I want to give a shout out to Oscar Rosario for mixing the episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for Placement Music. We'll catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye!